Good morning. Thank you all so much. I can't tell you what an honor it is to be back in this pulpit again and to be back here amongst so many loving and caring people who have supported me. It means more than I can say. I really felt during my ordination like my heart was going to explode. So, but I'll stop talking about that or I will start crying again. So, I would like to begin today with some moments of joy and happiness, a favorite quote or reading. But of course, we have to begin with a pause, a moment of silence for yet more heartbreaking loss that we've experienced in our country this week. Today, we honor the lives of Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, and the 5 police officers in Dallas, Brent Thompson, Patrick Zamaripa, Michael Kroll, Lauren Ahrens, and Michael Smith. I'd like to read a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that has been shared widely this week, but I think it perfectly summarizes our need to hold on to the power of love in these dark times. King wrote, "The ultimate weakness of violence is that it is a descending spiral, begetting the very thing it seeks to destroy. Instead of diminishing evil, it multiplies it. Through violence, you may murder the liar, but you cannot murder the lie, nor establish the truth. Through violence, you may murder the hater, but you do not murder hate. In fact, violence merely increases hate. So it goes. Returning violence for violence multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Let us pause now in silence to remember, to mourn, to commit ourselves to working for more love and justice. Let us return now slowly from the silence. In dark times, the light becomes that much more precious. In that spirit, let us kindle now our common flame. The Reverend Lisa Doge writes, "Why a flaming chalice?" the question comes. It's the cup of life, we answer. A cup of blessings overflowing. A cup of water to quench our spirit's thirst. A cup of wine for celebration and dedication. The flame of truth, the fire of purification. Oil for anointing, healing. Out of chaos, fear, and horror, thus was crafted, a generation ago, this important symbol. So may it be for us in these days of sorrow. May it be a light to warm our souls and guide us home.
Good morning, and welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. My name is Beverly Church, and I'm part of the Sunday Services Committee. The Sunday Services Committee works behind the scene to make sure that your Sunday morning experience is a positive one, and that includes inviting guest speakers when our minister is out of the pulpit or having a guest musician. We also arrange for the ushers who greet you when you come in the morning and for the sound technicians who make sure that all of our microphones work. If you're interested in joining this committee, I'm transitioning off the committee this summer and we're welcoming new members and we'd be happy to have you. We happen to have a meeting today after the service, so if you're interested, please see me or Ann Ford or Julia Petro. Thank you. Our minister, Reverend Leonetta Belasi, is out of the pulpit today, and today's speaker is Cassie Hartley. I'll tell you more about her later. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors today. Please join us for coffee and bagels and conversation after the service downstairs. A member of the membership committee will be at the visitors table if you have any questions. At this time, I'd like to invite any first-time visitors to stand, if you're comfortable, and let us know where you are from and how you heard about us. We'd like to meet you. During the service, we have supervised nursery for babies and toddlers and religious education classes for children and youth. Please see Kim Nunez, our Director of Religious Education, for more information about those programs. If you need to leave the service for any reason, there are 2 other locations in the building where the service is broadcast. An usher can direct you. Let's remember that we are a welcoming congregation. This means that we welcome all humans regardless of race, sexual orientation, belief system, and age. We also welcome small children, even when they're fidgety and make noises. These little humans are our future, and we welcome them while they're in the meeting house. We have a couple of announcements today. First, from Gloria Tweedy.
Help. Next week, we are going to Gleaners. We need 25 people. We had 15, and George and his wife signed up today. Need 8 more people, 10 and older. Ask your friends. We are carpooling from UCF at 8:10. We're done at 11:30. Help. Thank you.
And John Benarowitz.
Hi. As many of you know, I'm on the Ministerial Transition Committee. We've talked about this, or you've heard a few times in the last months. As a brief reminder, the Transitions Committee, formerly known as the Search Committee, is working to, we've been charged with essentially 2 tasks: assess the congregation's needs when it comes to wants and needs when it comes to a minister and ministry, and second part, to then, given our needs, assess whether or not Reverend Leonetta meets those needs, and then we would transition from Reverend Leonetta as a consulting minister to a settled minister, and if not, then we move on to a full-blown search for a new settled minister. As part of this process that we're following, procedures laid out by UUA and their suggested procedures. One of them is, as I'd mentioned, step 1, assess the wants and needs. And the committee has decided that how we do that would be a survey. I have some here, paper copies. Just wanted to let you know that that's the stage we're at. We meet every other week. We're now surveying. We have some copies here, paper form, for you to fill out anonymously. We'll need to track, your name when you return the surveys, and we hope that you do, so that we know, how many people we've had register and give an opinion. But we will also be sending out electronic forms through an email. So if you see one, it's from a tool, maybe, not sure if you've heard before. SurveyMonkey is an email. Yep.
You prefer online, I'm guessing, or doesn't it matter to you?
I think it wouldn't matter. I don't know. It's either way. We're prepared to track. So online would be great because it's less collection, but we're still going to make note of at least through received, it comes in and saying who returned a survey or not. So yeah, when you do see the email, we'll be doing this in the coming week. It's not spam, it's us. It'll come from a company called SurveyMonkey, and it'll have UCF labeled and noted on it. But just let you know, look for it. You can either do it paper here today, or hand some out and back, or it's coming in the mail.
Please check your order of service for other announcements about upcoming events. And of course, please take a moment to silence your phone. We will now read together the Litany of Gathering, which is in your order of service. This is our sacred time and space. We gather in community to renew our spirits, to explore the mystery, and to share our joys and sorrows. With you, I find strength. With me, you can share your deepest self. We share triumphs. We share failures. We share joy. We share sorrow. Please come forward to the microphone and share any brief joys or sorrows of a personal nature that you wish to share with us.
Charles Baber, and this is Liam. Most of you have seen him before. And Liam had a little brother come into the world last Saturday. What's his name? Ryder. He's a happy, healthy little guy, but some of you that have been following us on Facebook know that he was born with a birth anomaly called bladder extrophy, which means his bladder and other organs are on the outside of his body, and he'll have to have corrective surgery, reconstructive surgery sometime in September. But he's in no pain or discomfort, and the urologist at U of M, so he was in U of M right after birth, and the urologist at U of M says he sees about 1 a year, and he's been doing these for years. So we're very happy about that, and we will keep you posted. Otherwise, he's healthy, but we'll keep you posted as to the surgeries and such.
Oh well, I think it's going to stay down.
I'm Julian Merlin, and some of you may have followed Jill and my little trip across the country. I had an airplane project that I'd been building for 16 years, and I decided it was time to move it on. And I found one guy to buy it, and unfortunately, it was in Northern California. In order to make sure it happened, I offered to deliver it. He paid the expense, so Jill and I had an expense-paid trip in this 24-foot diesel truck across the country, and it was a wonderful trip. Great time to bond, including going through Donner Pass and some jokes back and forth about barbecue and things like that. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. We had a good time.
I'm delighted to have my son Mark here. He's Bethesda, Maryland, an active union. And he's been here many times, and he grew up in the Sunday school.
My name is Sarah. My sorrow was that in March, unfortunately, my family lost a very wanted pregnancy. But my joy and tinged with worry is that I'm now 13 weeks with a strong heartbeat. So here's hoping the next 6 months go well.
Hi, I'm Tom Livingston. I wasn't able to be here for your ordination. I apologize out on business, but my joy today is that Cassandra is in the pulpit today. And I'm going to light a candle for that. And for that last announcement, I'm going to light one for that.
I'm William Watson, and my wife and I, at the auction last year, we bought a day at the lake with the Rourkes, and yesterday it happened, and it was an absolutely perfect day.
May these lights remind us of the meaning of community and the mission of this congregation. Our first hymn is number 298, Wake Now My Senses. We'll do the first 3 verses. Please rise as you are able. We'll now read together the unison words of offering on page 4 of your order of service. Sharing our resources allows us to be the keepers of this Unitarian Universalist Church established in 1853 here in Farmington. Our speaker today is Reverend Cassandra Hartley. Cassie is the Assistant Minister for Spiritual Growth and Development at the First Universalist Unitarian Congregation of Ann Arbor. She graduated with a Master of Divinity from Detroit Ecumenical Theological Seminary, and we were honored that she was ordained into Unitarian Universalist ministry here at our church on June 12th. She has a deep passion for faith formation and has worked in several congregations, including an internship with the Church of the Larger Fellowship that focused on family ministry. Cassie is a mother of 3, and she and her husband Rob have been members of the Ann Arbor UU Church since 2013. Please welcome Cassie Hartley.
There were many things that scared me about training to be a hospital chaplain, but nothing scared me more than the idea of attending my first death. I had been to and officiated at many funerals and memorials, of course, but I had never been with somebody in the immediate moments before or after death. I was terrified that I would do or say the wrong thing in someone's final moments, that I would fail to comfort the family members when they needed me most. I was also terrified of how I would handle the physical experience of death. What would a body look like outside of a funeral home? Would I be overcome by the smells? Would I have to touch the body? Needless to say, the first time I was paged to attend to a death, I felt my stomach turn into a lead weight and go crashing to the floor. It was nighttime, and so when I entered the hospital room, it was dark except for a few yellow overhead lights that illuminated a motionless man lying on his bed. His wife was crying quietly in a dark corner, but when I entered, she quickly came over to greet me. After our introductions, we sat side by side next to her husband, and she told me about his life, his illness, and his death just a few moments before. I was talking on the phone with my mother while he slept, she explained, and then I heard him take a loud, deep breath, and I realized it was his last. Normally, a chaplain would offer prayers or rituals in moments like these, but since she was Muslim, religious rites were reserved for the male family members who were still on their way. So our ritual was to sit together and talk and cry and keep watch. It was a beautiful and poignant experience in many ways, and I was surprised to realize that I wasn't feeling overcome by the physical signs of death. In fact, there was only one part of the experience that I found unsettling: the sterility. There were no noises, no smells, no sights. Instead, it was all very unnaturally clean and quiet. By most standards, this was a good death, a privileged death. He needed to be in the hospital if there was even the slightest chance of being cured, and this hospital was one of the best, full of kind, caring staff and cutting-edge technology. And yet, sitting there, looking at his gnarled hands resting on perfectly white sheets, I couldn't help but think about how I would want my own death to be, how much I would want to see in my final days and hours the trees in my backyard, how much I would want to smell the damp earth after a good rain, how much I would want to taste the layered flavors of my favorite Indian curry and hear a boisterous Celtic jig, how much I would want to feel the cat nuzzling my chin and hold the soft mess of arms and legs as my children vied for the perfect cuddling spot. For people who enter hospice at home, this is the kind of death that they could have. But more often than not, circumstances lead us to spend our final days in a hospital. And during my time working as a chaplain, I saw how wonderful a hospital could be. It was comforting for patients and their families to be in that controlled environment, and it was important for them to have the best medicine and technology available. And yet, I also heard countless stories of people longing for more connection back to the physical world. people who desperately wish to see flowers blooming in their garden or feel their dog curled up warmly beside them. In many ways, a hospital is a microcosm for our modern world. We create landscapes and homes that are controlled and often filled with man-made materials. We seek convenience and sterility and technology, and yet there is a deep, often unspoken need to connect back to something real, to a more grounded experience in the literal sense of the word. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to read a book entitled Becoming Animal by David Abram. He's a philosopher and ecologist, not the movie star. The title alone struck me because, of course, we already are animals. We don't have to become them. But as he argues in his book, we have spent centuries trying to distance ourselves from the natural world and our very animal bodies. He explains that this desire is rooted in our struggle with our own finitude and the uncertainty of the natural world. I'd like to share a longer passage from his book because I think it sums it up so perfectly. He writes, quote, "The body is an imperfect and breakable entity, vulnerable to 1,001 insults, to scars and the scorn of others, to disease, decay, and death. And the material world that our body inhabits is hardly a gentle place. The shuddering beauty of this biosphere is bristling with thorns. Generosity and abundance often seem scant ingredients compared with the prevalence of predation, sudden pain, and racking loss. There are things out and about that can eat us, and ultimately will. Small wonder, then, that we prefer to abstract ourselves whenever we can, imagining ourselves into theoretical spaces less fraught with insecurity, conjuring dimensions more amenable to calculation and control. We step blissfully into machine-mediated scapes, offering ourselves up to any technology that promises to enhance the humdrum capacities of our given flesh. And sure, now and then we'll engage this earthen world as well, as long as we know that it's not ultimate, as long as we're convinced that we're not stuck here. Thus do we shelter ourselves from the harrowing vulnerability of bodied existence. But by the same gesture, we also insulate ourselves from the deepest wellsprings of joy. We cut our lives off from the necessary nourishment of contact and interchange with other shapes of life, from antlered and loop-tailed and amber-eyed beings whose resplendent weirdness loosens our imaginations, from the droning of bees and the gurgling night chorus of frogs and the morning mist rising like a crowd of ghosts off the weed lot. For too long, we've closed ourselves off to the participatory life of our senses, inured ourselves to the felt intelligence of the muscled flesh and its manifold solidarities. But it's only by welcoming our vulnerability and uncertainty from the get-go that we can acclimate ourselves to the shattering wonder that enfolds us. This animal body, for all its susceptibility and vertigo, remains the primary instrument of all our knowing, as the capricious earth remains our primary cosmos." End quote. It's interesting to note that when we're born, we are not aware of being separate from the natural world, including the people around us. We experience ourselves and the world as a series of connected sensations, impulses, and needs. It's only when we grow older and begin to have social interactions and acquire language that we get a sense of a separate self and a unique culture. As you've seen from interacting with any 2 or 3-year-old or even a 1-year-old, sometimes this slow separation is painful for all involved. As teenagers, we struggle to come into a fuller sense of identity and our place in our community. In our teens and 20s, we're also able to comprehend increasingly complex and abstract ideas. It's common to feel invincible and fearless in these heady years. As adults, we often become consumed with careers and family life and politics, so there isn't much time, especially in our fast-paced society, to reconnect with our senses. It's often not until illness or age begins to push back on us that we remember our physical fragility and interdependence. In our final years, we must struggle to balance the reality of our finitude with an awareness that we are not separate from the rest of the world. We're part of a larger flow of time, a larger tapestry of life. And if we can come to a place of acceptance, this knowledge could be a source of comfort, a reminder that we are immortal in our own larger way. This pattern of life is also reflected in the changes in human religion and culture. Over the centuries, our Western culture moved from a focus on indigenous traditions that recognize the inherent interdependence of the natural world, and we began to move to religions and forms of culture that increasingly separated us from the natural world. The human being itself became fragmented as we separated our minds and our spirits from our body, and we elevated the intellectual and spiritual over the physical. Like the fearless teenager, our Western culture began to comprehend and celebrate increasingly complex and abstract ideas. And then, like the adult, we became consumed by our advancements in art, science, politics, culture, and philosophy. Now, however, we are aging, and our exciting advancements have begun to catch up with us. We are faced with the consequences of globalization, the potential for nuclear war, the realities of mass extinction and climate change. In other words, we are being forced to remember the fragility and possible finitude of the whole human species. We do have a choice, of course. We can continue to deny our interdependence until it's too late, or we can come to a place of acceptance. If we can begin to reconnect with the physical, natural world, if we can start to see ourselves as this larger part of this larger tapestry of life, we could become immortal in our own larger way. It gives me hope that in many areas of our culture, including religion, we are beginning to do just this. People of different faiths are experimenting with or returning to forms of worship and spiritual practices that engage our senses. And in recent decades, our own Unitarian Universalist Association added the seventh principle, which affirms the interdependent web of existence, of which we are a part. We also added the sixth source, which honors the spiritual teachings of earth-centered religions and traditions. We too are experimenting with worship and spiritual practices, but of course, as a movement that still prioritizes intellectualism above all else, we have a little ways to go to create some more balance. But regardless of how quickly our religions and larger culture make changes, as individuals, we have an opportunity in any given moment to pause and reconnect with our senses. As David Abram pointed out, we have become experts at protecting ourselves from the harrowing vulnerability of bodied existence. But by the same gesture, we also insulate ourselves from the deepest wellsprings of joy. May each of us find our own ways to return to these sources of joy. May we create for ourselves an embodied faith. May we celebrate each day the sheer wonder of all life. Amen, and blessed be. Now, of course, it would not make sense for me to show the importance of an embodied faith by asking you to sit in a pew and listen to me talk for the whole service. So I wanted to change things up a bit, and I hope you'll bear with me as we experiment a little. We're going to engage in some spiritual practices that can connect us to our senses. Today, we're only going to focus on meditation, but of course, there are many, many ways that we can reconnect, whether it's yoga, dance, burning incense, preparing communal meals, chanting, and many, many more. As you may have noticed, we have some meditation stations set up at the front of the sanctuary. Each table has 2 different stations. We're going to begin with a sound meditation together, and then at the end, I will ring our small hand chimes, and Diana will begin to play the piano, which is an indication that it's time to quietly move on to the next station. You can choose whichever station you'd like to do next. We'll have time to do 3 of the remaining 4 stations. And instructions for how to interact with each station are in your order of service, or they're also at the table. But while we don't have time to do all 5 senses, I hope this will give you at least a taste, pun intended, of some of the different ways that we can experience meditation. And if you aren't able to move easily from your seat to the tables and back again, please feel free to raise your hand, and Beverly and I will make sure that we bring things to you and help you as much as possible. If you are the kind of person who just does not like this kind of guided meditation, and I completely understand, please feel free to use this time in whatever way is most meaningful to you. So let us take a moment to make ourselves comfortable. Feel free to close your eyes or soften your gaze. And we're going to begin with our sound meditation. I will be ringing this meditation bowl a few times, and each time I encourage you to listen closely to see if you can find the moment when the sound completely disappears. And when the bowl stops ringing, I invite you to notice the many subtle layers of sound that make up what we often call silence. please feel to get up during the music and move about as you need to go to each station. You will have 4 to 5 minutes to do each station, and we'll have pauses in between each station. So feel free to take your time and really be present with whichever station you've chosen. This will be our final station. As we return now, I hope that this experience gave you some moments of insight, meaning, or peace. I also hope that this is just the beginning as we all seek to explore the many ways that we can reconnect with our world and our senses. In that spirit, I invite you to join me now in singing hymn number 301, Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky. Feel free to stand as you are willing and able. As we extinguish our chalice, I'd like to share a translation of a Navajo blessing. Beauty is before me, and beauty is behind me. Above me and below me hovers the beautiful. I am surrounded by it. I am immersed in it. In my youth, I am aware of it. And in my old age, I shall walk quietly the beautiful trail. In beauty, it is begun. In beauty, it is ended. May it be so, and blessed be.
This concludes our service. Please stay and enjoy the postlude and then join us downstairs for coffee and bagels.